So we're just coming out of executive session. And before we do anything else, the agenda we got yesterday that added the item to accept the gift of a baby grand piano did not come out 48 hours before now. So without objection, I'm going to add the acceptance of that gift to the consent agenda. Does anybody object to that? Okay, great. Then let's move right into comments from the public on items that are not on the agenda. No? Okay. All right, great. Then our consent agenda, just give me one. Yeah, except I have to have those, right? So I'll entertain a motion to, well, no, first, does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda consisting of the meeting minutes of April 16th, the retreat minutes from April 30th, the approval of warnings, the approval of 2 leaves, one for Lindsay Naser. It's a 1-year leave, and she's a 7th and 8th grade math teacher at ADL, and one for Rachel Harris, a 1-year leave, and she's a science teacher at ADL. And professional appointments, Joe Kavoria, a 1-year position as a grade 2 teacher at Hiawatha, and Bryce Courier for a 1-year position as a phys ed teacher at Hiawatha. And finally, approval of the acceptance of a gift valued at $6,000. Who did that? Todd, thank you. So Todd makes the motion. Where's Kim? There she is. All those in favor say aye.
Point of order, you're not including the warrants?
I did say
Okay,
warrants.
I missed that.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. All right, so the consent agenda is approved. So next, we'll move into two student pieces. And the first is the high school senior privilege subject. And I believe Rob, do you want to introduce the students who are here?
So, yes, thank you. I'll start, and the students certainly
Perfect.
introduce themselves. It's been a joint effort, and the students put in a lot of good work in terms of taking what was a past practice and has been a closed campus for the past 13 or 14 years, and with conversation and getting some answers to some obstacles that were in the way, we think we have a good presentation for senior privileges to go back into effect starting with the next school year. But Drew, you can introduce yourself.
So I'm Drew Reister. I'm a junior at EHS.
Kayla Dieng, junior at EHS as well.
And I will certainly give them the opportunity to share with you the work that they've done, which has been outstanding. So, and I will have for Superintendent Cobb before your next board meeting kind of the specifics to it, because it's still a work in progress, because we've recently, within the last week, and a half to 2 weeks, we've heard from our legal counsel, which was one of the questions I had in regards to how we move forward. So basically, next year, at the start of the school year, with parent permission, of course, seniors in good standing would have the opportunity, when they are not scheduled in courses at EHS, to leave campus and then return. So currently, the practice is students can have, seniors and juniors can have late arrival or early release. So if they didn't have a class scheduled during block 1, 2, or 7, 8, you can arrive late or leave early. This would include blocks 3, 4, and 5, 6, which for the past 13, 14 years has been closed campus for seniors and juniors. To be clear, and not to be confusing, the juniors for next year would still have the late arrival and early release option in their schedule if they had a study hall. This would include and expand seniors who earn the privilege by being in good standing to choose to leave during blocks 3, 4, and 5, 6, and during lunch. Advisory, however, they would be required to attend. Advisory occurs at the end of 3, 4, before lunch starts. So I'll let the students say what they've done so far to get to this point. The two main concerns I had moving forward, one was having the back entrance fully operational and functional. That's the entrance by CTE in the back of the building by the tennis courts. The vestibule, for lack of a better term, is pretty much completed, but I know they're working on the wiring and the electrical components to make it fully operational as the front door is. The other piece that we're looking to expand upon in the back would be if no one was in the back area, we could operate the doors from the front area through cameras and remote control. That will be in effect at the start of the next school year. The second piece, which I alluded to, was getting our legal counsel to weigh in, because for those of you that were around, I think Al would probably be a good reference. When the U46 board did an audit back in 2006, 2007, it was recommended that we move to a closed campus based on best practices, things of that nature. So one of the things I wanted to make sure was that by moving to a senior privilege, and notice we're not calling it open campus for a reason, that we were not going to expose the district to risk, legally speaking. And we had a very, I thought, very good and appropriate response from council that that's not going to be the case. We would not be exposing the district to liability in that regard. But the students had a lot of work to do on this, so I've certainly turned it over to Drew and Kayla and let them share with you what they have done, which is exemplary.
So to begin with, I want to thank everyone, the school board, Ms. Cobb, Mr. Reardon, Mrs. Gleason, Mr. Donahue, students, and anyone else that's helped us push this proposal forward. It's kind of funny how this all started. It was just an argument in class with a couple of seniors who wanted to leave during class and they couldn't. So I sent a hefty email to Mr. Reardon, almost 5 paragraphs, and he agreed to meet with me and showed me the files, and I couldn't have gotten this off the ground without Kayla, so we brought it to Student Gov, and she really carried a lot of the weight for this. And together we've accomplished our goals of having senior privilege. So.
Kayla?
To describe a little bit more of what we did, so Drew came to Student Gov with this initiative, and before he came, which was very appreciative, he had already done most of the research and visited other schools and other principals to see what our neighboring high schools were doing. And after looking at other high schools, we met with CTE, since this policy was going to affect with CTE. So Drew and I constantly met with CTE and Mr. Reardon and Brian Donahue and Beth Cobb as well. That was our final say.
CTE, the communication was important, obviously, because we're all on the same campus and we commingle. The one significant difference, I guess I would say, between the two is the CTE students, when they're in their programs, which start at roughly 9:40 and go through the afternoon when they dismiss around 2:05, they don't have study halls built into their schedule. They're in their program. This would be applicable to CTE students for their lunch period, which is the way it used to be prior to 2006, if you were interested in that history. But CTE has a slightly different schedule than what high school students have throughout the course of the day. Do you have any, Kim, do you have any questions?
For our seniors, will they be scheduled for study halls, or will it be the assumption that they won't have them if they are not either eligible for privileges or
They will,
whatever, they get then put
it's a
in the
good question, but
underclassmen study hall?
we will schedule them because as part of the process, looking at other neighboring schools, parents would have the right to not allow students to leave campus if it was their purview, so we would need to have them somewhere.
So, but the assumption's gonna be that they are not going to be allowed. And we're going to, I guess I'm thinking about our challenges with study hall coverage, where our students are having study hall because we have challenges with getting teachers for coverage based on the limitations within our contract. So I'm just wondering why the assumption would be that we would be scheduling for study hall versus assigning them to study halls if either they don't get permission or they become ineligible.
As a fallback place to locate them somewhere in the building. The assumption would be like it was prior to the audit in 2006. Most seniors back in the day had the privilege and they utilized the privilege. Parents gave the permission. Part of this process, when you don't have the document tonight, but you will in a few weeks, parents will have the opportunity to sign off on that and hand deliver it to the main office at the start of the school year. But if by chance, for some reason, a parent or guardian did not want to give this privilege to their son or daughter, then we would then need to have a place for them. But I would see that being, based on past practice, a very, very small number.
But again, I guess my question was to our limitations with our utilization of staff and where our students end up for study hall, because there isn't the staff capacity, I guess, within the contract sometimes second semester, or I'm just looking to see if there isn't a way
I think this
for
would,
it to, and also for the
regards to
first
study
couple
halls,
weeks.
this would help alleviate the issue.
I think I hear Rob saying that the parents will bring in the permission before they assign students to study halls.
Oh, so you'll know that before. I thought I just heard you say that they're gonna bring them in at the beginning of school, at which point they would have already been scheduled for study hall.
Well, on their schedule, which we have run, they would have study hall in them. But the senior privilege would take effect unless we get information saying they don't have permission to have that.
Oh, so the default is that they
Yeah,
have it scheduled and they have it unless you hear otherwise.
Right.
And so when you're scheduling staff, are you counting those 300 kids or whatever, whoever may have a study hall, as needing a place and needing
No.
a staff?
no.
Okay,
We would only
I'm
add
really
them
not
on to those
understanding,
that
but
don't
that's fine.
get the privilege, which is a very small number.
Okay.
Andre.
I guess the concern I have is I understand you're opening it up that the student could leave campus during a lunch period and then return.
Mhm.
I guess my flag is concerns on safety and maybe indulging in nefarious substances or whatever.
That always is a possibility.
And so, but I guess I'm more concerned on security issues of students coming back with something that they should not have.
Well, part of the procedures, which you don't have a copy of, would be to return and check in the main office, the main
And
entrance
then
by
they
the
have
main
a-
office, where security is posted all through the school.
Okay. Then the other follow-up question, with the closed campus, does that entail allowing the students to go to their cars during the day?
No, usually students would ask permission to go to their cars, because if we see students coming from the parking lot where they shouldn't be,
Right,
they're usually brought in the administrator's office and searched. That's common practice.
but with a closed campus, so you're saying they can go off campus, but they would not have the privilege of going to their cars to get the books or whatever that they don't want to carry all day.
Well, with an open campus, that would change that.
But,
I was addressing what happens currently.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I know if my son got in trouble going to his car and then he started having pizza delivered to the school. I think you're
Yeah, that's happened a time or two throughout the year.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have some other questions, Brenda, and then Q.
So what constitutes good standing?
That is something we're gonna clarify, but a couple things that have been in play in the past are attendance, academic standing, of course, and behavior. Those are usually what when we would look at tuition students and students in good standing, that would be usually what we would constitute that.
Yeah.
Does your slideshow have that stuff in it? Do we want to use that?
We mentioned good standing, but we didn't
Get to
make
the
it more
detail.
specific to that.
Yeah.
But
We
we didn't
can
get
add
a
that,
chance to
obviously.
see your slideshow.
Yeah.
Would you like to show us your
Yes,
slideshow?
please.
I would love that.
Well,
I think it was.
I know.
Haley, do you mind waiting?
I don't mind waiting as long as I get to ask my question.
So,
Thank you,
topic
guys.
is obviously senior privilege at Essex High School.
Here, do you
The
mind-
goal.
Take the microphone. Got this.
Usually don't even.
So, the goal is senior privilege, obviously. That would allow eligible students, which means seniors in good standing, both behaviorally, academically, and whatever else we constitute that as good standing, can leave during appropriate times, which are study halls, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, lunches, A, B, C, and D, but not advisory. The next steps are finishing the security updates on doors, as Mr. Reardon mentioned, the CTE area entrance at the back of the high school by the tennis courts. CTE is also being updated in the same way. One of the updates is that the main entrance gets notified when other doors, where there aren't necessarily security guards, are opened. The next step would be communicating changes to parents. So we communicated this with you, but we need to send out an email to all the parents to let them know what's going on. Do anything?
I can do the next slide. So our proposed changes would be the locus parentis waivers sent out to parents at the beginning of the school year. And as already stated, leaving during lunch blocks and study halls. Only seniors are eligible for this privilege in behavior with good standing. Some of the issues that we have already come up with our current proposal would be seniors bringing underclassmen off campus, food deliveries that could disrupt classes. That was huge for CTE since they're very hands-on based learning. And then seniors leaving during advisory, and before the audit, there was no advisory at that time period. And then tardiness, and all of these, we feel like we could state that if this were to happen, that seniors could lose their privilege for doing one of these things.
Also, at the start of next school year, when we present this to the, obviously after the communication to the parents, but we present this to the seniors, I'll have 2 excellent ambassadors to join me in addressing the seniors as we unfold this to help them have a clear understanding. We also have spoken to food services as well as this process is unfolded.
So, reasons for open campus is students already leave, and yes, they're reprimanded, but they're going to leave regardless. So this helps increase accountability in the sign in and out process, knowing where kids are when they're gone. Also, students, like you mentioned, they want to go to their cars to get books or go get food or have any other logical reason to leave campus. It allows them to do so. And the third one is seniors are going to college, most of them, the next year. So they need to learn responsibility, time management skills. And going from a closed campus high school to college is a huge change. So this is kind of an intermediary step, giving them more responsibility. Before the audit, back in, was it 2006?
Thereabouts, yep.
It was an open campus, and it was due to overcrowding. I think Mr. Reardon mentioned it was 1,612 students. There just wasn't enough room in study halls to pack all the kids, so juniors and seniors were allowed to leave, and it was complete open campus. Like Kayla mentioned, there was no advisory, so students were leaving during lunch and their study halls. Want to do it?
Sure. So after the audit, which is currently what we are following, students, only juniors and seniors were allowed to arrive to school late or leave school early during 1, 2, and 7, 8 blocks. They're required to stay during lunches 5, 6, 3, 4, and advisory times. Why did the policy change? So the policy changed due to issues that were arising with school safety, and just to create, and also the overcrowding issue is why our population had decreased, so there was no longer an issue for overcrowding in study halls.
The policy change, it was an audit done in 2008 by a national company, and Mr. Rudin shared the audit with me and I think the school board too. And one of the solutions, I guess, to increasing security was an open campus but having a sign and out sheet, or a modified closed campus. And the school board at the time, I believe, chose a modified closed campus. And yeah. Summary: advocate for an EHS senior privilege. And then, again, the process of allowing kids to do that would be the parents handing a waiver to the school, waivering the school's responsibility of local apprentice, which means in place of the parent. And then having a safe open campus for seniors, senior privilege, which would increase accountability, thus reducing risk. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So Keely still has a question.
Yes. My question is about the waiver of in loco parentis. First of all, whether students who are 18 years old can decide to have the senior privilege without a parental waiver. And second, what we do about families where, for whatever reason, the parent or guardian is unable to come to the school to do this. Perhaps they don't understand the waiver, or they are at work at all times that the school is open. Is there an alternative so that those students don't find themselves excluded from a privilege?
So yes, if there are situations where parents have, due to timing or lack of mobility, access to school, we can make arrangements to get the communication from them. The reason for the face-to-face drop-off in the main office so that something can't be scanned, right. It's legit correctly. That's the main reason for it.
I think we discussed previously in our meetings that students who are 18, it would be that they would still need a parent's consent. That way they can't just freely do what they wish.
So this would, I guess one way to answer you would be what we do on attendance right now. So one of the challenges that some 18-year-olds have, especially if they turn 18 midway through second semester, is they may choose to try and sign themselves out and miss class a lot, which is obviously problematic to graduation. So we continue our communication with the parents, even though the student is 18. And the only exception to that would be if the student was actually living on his or her own, renting an apartment where they are the sole occupant of that place. But obviously most students are dependents of the parents and live with the parents, so we still communicate, keep the communication open with the parent.
FERPA doesn't limit that for 18-year-olds?
No, they have adult rights.
Kim?
So I think I want to clarify Keely's, and then I have another question. So 18-year-olds can sign themselves out, or they can't?
They can, but we communicate with the parent.
But then you get the notification
Yes.
on PowerSchool or whatever. Okay.
Yes, they're not out of the loop.
Okay. And I thought that I had understood you to say, Rob, that the default was going to be that they have the privilege. If they don't want them to have the privilege, they come in.
But we're still having parents sign the form.
So it's not the
For the
default that they have the privilege. 300 parents are going to come and bring a waiver of their students.
That's based on our legal advice that we received.
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm just, again, to Keely's point, and people's ability to come and your ability to manage, I'm not sure when, 300 people arriving with the waiver. I know for sports, I go through an online thing to authorize participation, and I'm wondering if that is...
That's something we're working on, but we haven't solidified at this point.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? with this.
I was just wondering about junior privileges and upper class privileges and why it was why you decided to just focus on seniors, and did you give consideration to junior class privileges as well?
I think we stuck with seniors because that's what CBU had done and NMU had done as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have kind of an odd, quirky question that I think will make sense after I explain it. Rob, I don't know the answer to this, but does the high school, like through the guidance office or anything, provide safe sex, like condoms or anything, to students who need them?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. That actually,
That answers
yeah, that answers my question because, right, I mean, you know, I'm realistic. I had open campus in my high school, and I didn't leave, but a large chunk of the kids who did leave left boyfriend and girlfriend, you know, and, you know, it was obvious that they were going to have sex. So, you know, just the idea, just knowing that we're, you know, providing condoms, that's all I wanted to know.
School counselors in the nurse's office.
Awesome.
And
Great.
Students know this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much for a great presentation. And I clearly you've done a good job of advocating for yourselves and your fellow students. And it sounds like there's been a good process to make this come to fruition. So thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up we have students from Westford to have a different request to fly a flag on the flagpole. So, do you want to take the microphone, Val?
Hope you guys miss me.
We did. Welcome back.
Good to miss you.
We'll expect you to join us one day.
So, we're ready to hear what you have to say. We've received your written materials, but I think it would be good to say just a few sentences about what you're requesting and why.
We are requesting to fly the gay pride flag at our school. I personally would like it up so we can get a conversation going for the younger kids. And I know that parents might be against that, but I feel that if we teach them at a young age that it's okay to be who they want to be, and it's okay to do whatever they want, unless it's illegal, that they can do that. It matters what their parents think, of course, but that they just don't have to follow every rule. And I think for the future, it'll be better for my generation and the future generations to come for more acceptance to come in. So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm 6. Like, if I sound weird, don't worry about it.
It's a new t-shirt. We all got kind of a little...
I think,
Yes.
yeah. I think what Belle was also trying to say is it helps people just kind of learn about it, and not only if they are questioning about it, like their sexuality and whatever, but also even if they just want to know, to be an ally. And I mean, the purpose of this flag is just to show people that you care, and you don't have to be a part of this community, the LGBTQ plus community, to be an ally to each other. And I think it's important for kids to know these things at a young age, like Belle said, because it helps you in the future. And I think I feel like if you're more knowledgeable, you'll be more successful. And that's what I think, but I feel like it would work better.
And you did a petition. Do you want
Yes.
to talk about that briefly?
So when we did the BLM stuff, we presented it in front of the lunchroom with all the students in there. And this year we were told that we should go classroom to classroom, so that's what we did. We went to the 5-6 first, we talked to them, told them a little bit about what we wanted and why we're doing it, and we got a pretty good response from them. And then afterwards, I personally went from different classes to see like 7th and 8th grade and what they said. And some kids I went to personally to see like, hey, can you sign this for me? Let me give you more information about it if you need.
Our petition was only 5 through 8 because you can't use kids from under middle school ages. And we were told that the lunchroom was, if kids felt pressured to sign it, which, like, you do you. But, so we had to go around classroom to classroom. And I don't know if it was more efficient or not, but it was kind of cool to see, like, what classes had, like, what grades, I guess, their opinion was. So, it was interesting.
I just wanted to mention that for this one especially, we got definitely a lot more guys signing it compared to last year where we had it was rougher, I guess. And especially some of my friends, I knew that they didn't sign it. So then I went to them personally during a math period where we had finished all our work, and I was like, hey, can you guys sign this? Here are the reasons why. And 2 of them obliged, and they did sign it. And I was proud of myself for that, but it's kind of silly, I know, but I just thought that, yeah, it was cool.
We weren't trying to pressure kids into doing things either. Like, it's their choice whether they want to do it or not, but I feel like it's good for every student to know what the deal is with this. And going up to them personally is probably a good idea too, because, like, if they weren't there, if they missed something, or if you know those kids kind of struggle with hearing things, I feel like it's easier when someone comes up and talks to me. So, it went well.
So, questions from board members or comments? Kaylee?
I was glad to see the petition. It streamlines everything if you guys only have to visit once. I would like to clarify if it's just supposed to be students, because I think there was one teacher signature on there, which could again give students a feeling like, oh, my teacher's signing it. If I want a good grade, I'm going to sign this one.
We said teachers were allowed to sign it, but that was after most of the classes had done it.
Okay. Other questions?
I
or
just have a
comments?
comment. Thank you guys for coming and for all the work that you're doing in your school to make it better for the people who come after you. I know you're about to leave there, and the energy you've put into the building and to the kids that are coming after your journey in that building ends is just fantastic, and thank you so much.
I just want to say, so I am a lesbian, just if you didn't know, I am. And when I came out and I was trying to figure out my identity, it was just a little bit harder. And it took a little while longer than I think it should have, because I knew deep down that's what I was, but I just couldn't admit it at first. And I think that if we, both of us and the future generations at Westford School, start to realize that it's okay to be whatever you want, do whatever you want, I think it would just be easier for students in the future to be whoever they want to be, because they're kids. I mean, they want to be a unicorn, let them be a unicorn. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Thanks, Belle. Thanks, Rosie.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I'll take that back. Thanks, Belle.
No problem.
So, we did warn this as an action item. The students have asked either to fly the flag for the rest of the school year or for the month of June. Given that it is May 14th, the rest of the school year would basically be a month. You have the guidelines in your packet. Are we ready for a motion, or do board members have other things they want to talk about before we make a decision about the request?
I'll move to approve the student's request to fly the flag until the end of the school year, starting tomorrow, I guess.
Is yeah. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Thank you both, and I
Thank you.
would just echo what Liz has said. I think you are great examples of working toward what we as a district are working hard for, and that is to make every student feel welcome in our school. So, thank you. Well done. All right, we have much more to do. Okay, next on our agenda is to debrief our board retreat. Beth did her best to decipher Brian's notes. You know, it was challenging. I think, sorry about this. I was wondering if it would make sense to focus on the priority tasks and see what folks have to say about that, or if people have other more general comments about the retreat, that would be fine as well.
Say the priorities. Focus on those.
I'm not sure I quite.
You were asking, do we want to focus on the priorities or the retreat in general? And I was suggesting that.
Oh, you're saying let's look at the priorities and talk about where we're at. Is that Keely?
Yeah, I mean, other than saying that both in the case of having Brian in and Nicole Mason, we've gotten some good help and discussion and perspective. I don't know that we need to discuss more about the other parts right now.
Okay. Everybody agree? Okay, so on the task is to define our governance model, and later in the agenda we have a charge for governance testing and membership. So we'll be talking about that shortly. Clarity on roles and responsibilities, I feel like we continue to work on that. I think it's important for us to try to remind each other when we're headed in the wrong direction. Obviously, when we do agendas, we try to make sure that they're focused on work that is board work. So, but I hope if you feel like we're getting outside our roles and responsibilities, that you will speak up or at least speak to me. Building in for more time for discussion. Oh, Kelly, did you have Brandon? Okay.
So I think my comment falls under this one. One of the things that I don't know is what kind of orientation we're providing for new board members and or our student members. And so I would just be curious as to what level of formality do we have around the orientation, and maybe in terms of onboarding, that's something that the board could contribute to in a broader discussion on some kind of regular basis.
So Beth and I did an orientation with Todd yesterday. We basically used VSBA materials and other materials like the Agency of Education definitions to talk about roles and responsibilities. And in terms of student board members, I guess I thought that was the job of the mentors, but I don't know that we ever had a formal discussion about that. So I'm going to think more about that and talk to mentors about it and try to be sure we're more deliberate. There is coming up on June 1st, the SBA is doing, I think, Todd, it's a day-long workshop on roles and responsibilities. It's a Saturday. It happens to be my granddaughter's graduation weekend, so I can't go, but I think if it's an area that board members are interested in continuing to hone their knowledge about, that would be a good opportunity.
I just wanted to thank Laura and Grace, who's not here tonight, for working with the mentors on getting this right. And Martha and Kim and I are going to be working with Laura and Grace on to talk about their experiences and how we can do better moving forward, understanding that this was clumsy in this first year. And we really are going to, and thank you, Laura and Grace, for that, because that's what's going to help us to do better on this point moving forward.
I think we'll have an awesome opportunity this year with Laura continuing with us,
Right.
where by the time Laura came in, Nick had moved on.
Right.
And it was, we were during our transportation conversations all fall. So we did get to spend a little time together with Grace and Laura, and I think myself and maybe Liz, in going through the book and the material that VSBA offers, but it really wasn't till later in the year, and that wouldn't be ideal. So I think that we'll make a priority of that with our whomever the new person is very early on,
Yeah.
if not August, September. And it'll be awesome to have Laura be able to do that with us.
Yeah.
I think to date I've appreciated everyone's involvement with Laura and Grace. I really feel that they've brought a lot of things to the board that we're not necessarily aware of, and I'd like to say you're hitting it running fast.
Anything else on roles and responsibilities, Keely?
Just that you mentioned that we should bring it up when anyone feels that we're overstepping our roles and responsibilities, but probably we should also think about times when we aren't fulfilling all of our responsibilities. I think especially with monitoring, we've sometimes been spotty about like being clear about what kind of information we need.
Good point.
I think in that regard, I would echo that, thinking that it really stuck with me, that idea that our administrators sometimes feel as though they're, throwing spaghetti against the wall to figure out where our collective interest is and what is the evidence we're seeking in demonstrating their progress in certain areas. So that is an area of clarity that needs to come out of whatever we do with respect to governance, so that it isn't a guessing game for them or inefficient use of their time. So that's our responsibility, I think.
Right. Next is building in time for more discussion. I would just say that I'm going to think about that. It's always a tough balance for me between trying to reasonably stick to the agenda so we're not here till 11 o'clock at night, but also making sure that all the points that need to come out in the discussion have come out. Also, I'm thinking about some opportunities to just have a discussion, like at our next meeting. I'm hoping that we'll build in time to talk about student achievement and what it is we would like to see from the administration to help us in our role of looking at achievement and assessing growth and what expectations we want to have and how we'll know if those expectations aren't being met. So, anybody want to say anything else about more time for discussion? Keely?
Something that Brian mentioned at one point during the meeting was sort of like polling to see if preponderance of the board felt that more discussion was needed. The reason why I think that might be valuable is because sometimes I at least fall into the habit of outsourcing interest in certain topics to other board members. Like, I might be interested in hearing about student data, but I know Al is going to bring it up every time it could possibly be relevant.
Right.
And some of the times that he brings it up, I'm thinking, Al is totally right, we need to talk about student data. And other times I'm like, that's not the most important thing right now. So finding out whether like 6 people on the board think we need to talk about the student data some more right now might be useful in deciding how to allocate the time.
Right. Good point.
And the other thing I would just, another thing is that the board learning from 6 to 6:30, I think worked really well for us to dive into the building equity book. And I think
6:30 to 7.
6:30 to 7, sorry. For some of us, it worked well. For some of us, we knew what time it was. That opportunity to do that in half-hour segments, I think, is another opportunity to have a discussion that we can't have at the board table, and as a special warning it as a special segment, then we can come to the table having had that conversation. That's another way that we could approach some of these conversations, because clearly the agendas are packed every time.
Good suggestion. Kim?
I think considering the timing when student data is relevant or important to the topic would be helpful when we are really looking at our full year about what's going to be reported on when, and knowing that ahead of time. I appreciate that we are going to be getting some additional student data because we've heard largely about 3rd and 4th grade, but we'll get other data before the end of the year, and getting you all a heads up on that in June might make sense. But I think potentially looking back at the goals we've stated for other than 3rd and 4th grade proficiencies, and having you share with us your thoughts on what evidence you can bring as data to support
Yeah,
those
we'll do that on June
goals.
4th.
So that would be that. So versus, yeah, so I'm just thinking you guys are able to give us a framework, and we can react to the depth of information and say, yep, if that's what we've got for evidence right now, that's great. And
So I envision having Amy be part of that conversation as well, so that we have somebody at the table who understands, as well as Beth does, what's possible. And yes, we should have a framework for the discussion. Anything else on more time for discussion? Todd?
I think it would just be good to be stricter with informational parts of the agenda, time-wise, and then when there are action items, allowing a little more time. And we're here, so if we're here another 10 or 15 minutes to have a discussion, I'd rather do that than delay it to another meeting.
Okay, good. All right, addressing issues in a timely manner so things don't linger. I think Brendan correctly identified this as an issue that we've had this year, that there have been times where angst, mostly around transportation, has carried forward from meeting to meeting, and so trying to address those issues in a way that gets people more comfortable, so that those feelings don't linger and start spilling over into everything else is important. And I think something we need to make time to talk about when it starts to happen. Other comments, Patrick?
Yeah, this sort of segues into the previous one as well, but much of the material that Brian brought was counter to what we can do with open meeting laws, and that there was a lot of discussion about informal chats with the superintendent, or informal like get-togethers or whatever, I think was the way that they phrased it. And I do see a lot of value in that. Like, I feel that, like, Martha and I, if we get together after a meeting that we have and we just spend 10 or 15 minutes in the parking lot talking, and it's not necessarily, in the context of a full board meeting, like, sometimes it lets me, just better elucidate the points I'm trying to get or to understand. And I'm just wondering if there's some way that we can figure out, without monopolizing all of yours and Beth's time, but if there might be some way where, if one of us does have a question that maybe isn't, or does have this lingering angst, that we can maybe just say, hey, over the next 2 weeks, could we maybe sit down for 20 minutes just so that I can get whatever I have, off of my chest. I don't really know if it even needs formalization like that, but just, I think knowing the option might be there, might help some people, if they walk away from the table frustrated, knowing that they can, feel comfortable coming and talking it out, before the next meeting might be pretty valuable.
I think it's something that we'd have to think about, like a process into place almost, because I could see it happening all the time, and then it would be kind of, but if it's an occasional thing, or is it always one person, so I think that could be tricky, but I understand the want, or there's times that you might want to do that.
Right, I don't want, and we shouldn't be taking up all of your time because you have, an entire district to run. Yeah. But I do think that, I think that there is significant value there, and I think that we aren't really tapping into it at all.
So I wonder if the first conversation is with the board chair, and then if the board chair can't resolve it and feels that it needs a conversation with the administration, that gets arranged.
Yeah, I used you and Beth because honestly, I didn't want to put the onus on one of you, to the exclusion of the other, but I just think that it's a legitimate criticism that we don't have some way of doing that right now.
I was just gonna, and it's coming up for end of meeting comments, but when Brendan offered at the this value, appreciate, challenge, end of meeting kind of protocol, I feel like that could do what you're saying, where when somebody says, here's a challenge that I've experienced tonight, then that person gets an email saying, can we talk more about what that challenge was? It doesn't have to, in my thinking of it, it doesn't have to be a formalized, here's the procedure for that. But what you're talking about is an opportunity to connect. And if we were to adopt something like, which I love this idea, that one word, not discussion, here's how I'm feeling. And if there are a few people who have identified, here's a challenge for me, then the next step is a reach out. Can we talk more? Can I get more information? It's not going to happen at the board table, because one of the things I loved about that was it's a comment and it's not a discussion. And it's the end of the meeting and we're not talking about it, we're not debating it, but that might be if the board likes moving in that direction, which I personally do, then that could be a way to capture those challenges and allow for a way to process that either through the communications team or through the board chair, or some way that we could address those challenges as they're raised without discussing it at the table.
What do folks think about trying that? Brendan, would you just explain a little more? Because our group heard it, but the other group didn't.
Sure. So the practice is at the end of a meeting, everyone goes around the table, or you can pass, and you have an opportunity to say something that you either valued, appreciated, or are challenged by as a result of the meeting. And so it's not meant to be a long, speech or monologue. It's literally, I was challenged by the discussion we had tonight about the flying the pride flag at Westford. That's it. Move on to the next. So it's just an opportunity to kind of, in that moment, air something that you either value, appreciate, or challenged by, and then it gives an opportunity to at least kind of get it off your chest in that moment, and maybe circle back and try to address it at a future time, either with the chair or in a broader discussion with the full board.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and the last thing is define the data needed for the board's role in assessing student progress. So we're going to have that discussion on June 4th. Okay? All right, anything else on the retreat?
I thought it was great, and I really appreciated Brian's involvement. I thought he did a really good job facilitating. I think having him do the interviews ahead of time was helpful for him, to sort of reconnect him to the members of this board, and also to reconnect him with the issues of the board. And it was great to have Brian and Beth participate and be openly hearing some of the feedback that he discussed.
Right. I appreciated the discussion prior, the questions he asked of us. It was a good step forward, 'cause I think we have not been doing that in previous retreats, and I think this was a good step.
Great. Okay, I'm going to move us along unless anyone objects. Okay. So, third quarter financial reporting, as you know, Kathy couldn't be here tonight. I asked for board members to send me, well, you received the financials and the slide deck that Kathy was going to present. Brian asked for questions. A few people asked questions, and those were answered in an email to you today. So at this point, is there anything you wanted to say, Brian? And then are there any lingering questions?
I don't have anything. I did in my new role of preparing to present this material, and I thank the board members for calling some attention to places where we can improve the reporting within the RINC, where we had some mathematical calculation problems with trying to figure out favorable and unfavorable. I also found a series of places where you may not have noticed, but the general fund wasn't listing federal dollars. So I was able to go over in the last couple of hours to tie out all the bottom lines. They're all there. All the information is there. But we need to go back and double down our efforts to making sure that we've got really high quality, well presented, quality controlled materials that are coming to you. I think they speak for themselves. The slide deck was good. It was a combination effort between Kathy, her staff, and Natasha Wield, who is the executive assistant to all of operations. And if there is something, Kathy's happy to come at the next meeting.
Okay. Questions, comments, anything?
Just one. I was looking at this nutrition plan, and I'm still a little bit concerned that it might be running into another deficit.
Did you see the response to the question about that?
Well, I was interested, yes, we did talk on a number of points. But what is the estimate of the deficit in your judgment?
Yeah, currently in talking with the managers of it just today, when the question came in, they're feeling that the cost containment that they're doing and the projected participation should leave them either at a break even or with a very slight deficit. So, I'm imagining something if there is a deficit, it would be somewhere in the 5-figure range.
Okay.
We're down year over year, same time period. We're down about 1% in overall participation. So we've generated about 370,000 meals so far, both breakfast and lunch, and that's down about 10,000 over a year prior. And we can see that while it's participation and that's choice, it's also been some model changes we've made at schools, and those have created a significant drop in some of our schools in changing when something's served, the length and duration of when it's served, and the time of the day that it's served can have major impacts. And we're building a new sensitivity that it's all of our operation, and so that those changes on one side, while they make sense, have consequences on another side, and we've got to work a little bit more symbiotic about that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Kim?
If we're not having a presentation of the slideshow right now, it would be on the website afterward.
Yep, I'm going to update it with a few more mathematical corrections, and then it will be fully up there and listed in our, we've built out an operations side of our page, which also tracks all the financial reports on just a single page, as well as the audit reports and our various filings that we have. So trying to have a lot more transparency as we go along with our finances.
Okay.
Okay. On the Center for Technology, Shared Services and Administrative Other Support, can you explain to me what's going on in that line? Because it says 632% differential.
So Kathy's slide just preceding the revenue and expenses talks about the timing of that charge in comparison. So what you're looking for at is a year-over-year difference is the timing of that expense coming from CTE over to EWSD. So shared services are a portion of cost that we charge CTE for maintenance, security, library, nurse, and other indirect costs, and that they pay that portion. Otherwise, it would be, it would be a greater economic burden on the Center for Technology to operate their own required library and nursing staff. So they share a portion of it.
So it is literally just a timing issue on this?
Yep.
Yeah.
And Kathy pointed out that, last year's process with shared services was a result of a number of issues that we've already talked about with the FY18 budgeting, and where it was represented in one budget but not represented in another, and that created some timing issues.
So we'll see this all ironed out for the fourth quarter then?
Yeah, certainly in the fourth quarter you'll have more comparison, and I think what you'll see is that hopefully we made a progress step with the FY19 budget, which was able to be done by your own staff opposed to an outside consultant, and then we'll be able to continue to make improvements in our financial reporting as we have more time in seat.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, so let's move on to Laura. She's by herself tonight.
Yay. Never alone, Laura. We got you.
That's it.
So I have papers for the report. I'll hand them down for you guys. And so our report was addressing Goal 7 of the board to plan for intentional opportunities to bring the student voice to the board work through our student board members. And the way that Grace and I interpreted that was to meet frequently with students from EWSD schools to be able to capture their voices and bring them to the board, and to meet frequently with Beth and our mentors, Liz and Kim, to figure out the best way to approach problems. One of the things that we wanted to address was intentional is a part of Goal 7 that we'd like to work on more next year with the help of the board. So we'd like to work with everyone to create a clear set of expectations for student reps on the board that will guide students next year and into the future. So the evidence of us carrying out this goal was periodic reports. So far, we've made 5 reports to the board in November, December, February, March, and April. And our reports have covered topics such as PLPs, flipped classrooms, open campus or senior privilege, and gym credits for varsity athletes.
student participation in board learning. We have been invited to participate in the conversation about the book Building Equity. We also attended the board learning about trust between the board and the administration. And we're hoping that next year there will be more opportunities and longer times for board learning. And one of the things that Grace thought was really important is that many people don't get to finish their thoughts during board learnings, especially like book talks right before, because we have to, make it to the table in time for a board meeting. And so we were wondering if there was any way we could make that longer or find a way so people could say what they wanted to. Creating invitations for student voice on timely topics. So there haven't been many timely topics like the ones last year. Like Nick had Black Lives Matter and gun control, and he worked really hard on that. But we have taken initiative with gathering student feedback on PLPs and school-specific issues. We've been in contact with students from all the EWSD middle schools, and we are planning to meet some members of student council from Fleming before the year ends. And we hope to make regular meetings with students throughout the district next year. Our regular meetings with the superintendent, well, we did meet with Beth a few times before meetings. We've not established a consistent time, and our schedules don't often allow for us to meet as frequently as we would like, because when you're running a district, I'm sure you don't have all the time in the world for everything.
Well, and when you're a student in the district.
Yeah, right. So this is on the list to be improved for next year, so we can set a time and work more with that. Regular meetings with board members. So Grace and I met with Liz and Kim several times over the year, and we talk frequently. They're lovely, I promise. In case you guys didn't know. They've also joined several of our meetings with administration from other schools. So for compliance, while there has been some progress, we would love to have a more specific definition of what student voice really means to the board and how it will be used to improve our schools. So we'd like more input from board members about what they would like to hear from us. This can be voiced during meetings or through a quick email. We would also appreciate more specific directions on your expectations, which would include statements broader than tell us anything students want us to know. When we present to the board, we'd like to see it happen in a more conversational meeting format rather than a formal presentation. So instead of raising hands at the end, if you have a question, just shout it out. We'll take it as it comes. It's been hard to bring some student voice to the board because of opposition we have met from building administrators, specifically Westford and to an extent Fleming. And after our conversations with students at Westford, we spoke with some faculty there for over an hour. It seemed as though there was a resistance in how the building leadership received feedback, and it was disappointing to meet with members of administration longer than they allowed us to talk with students. One of the things, sorry, I'm dying. One of the things that we really want to focus on is that we're not just trying to focus on negatives, but that's what the school administrators think sometimes, and it's frustrating both for us, thank you, as well as the students that go to those schools. So when the administration only focuses on the positives, someone has to bring up what needs to be improved in schools, and it too often ends up being students who are later punished for voicing concerns. There seems to be a lack of accountability when it comes to the unfun side of school. In the future, we would like to have more opportunities.
Can I conversationally ask
Yeah,
about
of course.
the unfun side of school and just be in areas where it's not working as well as
Yeah, so things that students would like to be improved in schools. When we were talking at Westford, we ran into a lot of kind of push and pull when the students would say, the school lunches aren't that great, which isn't a huge issue, to be honest. But if I'm just using that as an example, don't change everything in the lunch. But
that has been a student government platform, I think, since at least
yeah.
Since Brian was student government.
But you know, if that's what the students say, and then the school just responds with, "No, your lunches are great."
Period.
You know, exactly. It kind of gets tiring if students keep on bringing up issues because the administration isn't addressing them, and then they just get shot down. Does that kind of like answer?
That answers the
Okay,
question.
cool. So in the future, we'd like to have more opportunities to visit middle schools in the district as part of our role on the board. So on the job description for the 2018-19 student reps role, it clearly states to connect with students in all 10 schools within the district to bring student voice to the board's discussions. We have interpreted that to mean student reps visiting each school because we think it would be nice for students to be able to meet with their student reps face to face. We've also found that the younger kids probably won't have as many constructive ideas as middle schoolers, and while we're always open to any ideas students share with us, with the younger ones, we'll mostly focus on talking to them about what Grace and I do on the board and how they can or are showing the same kind of leadership skills in their own schools. Like when the kids came and presented to us about their recycling, or we went to Fleming and they talked about a few of the things that the student council is working on. And so Grace and I wanted to, talk to them about that, encourage them to show leadership in their own schools. And some of our goals for next year were to have a better understanding of the student board rep role. That's a mouthful. And to have more consistent meetings with Beth.
Awesome job,
Excellent.
Laura.
Thank you.
Yeah. Really great.
Questions, comments?
Just a comment. This is a model monitoring report,
Yeah.
so congratulations. It's incredibly informative, and I think we'll just continue to build on. It's just well done. Nice job.
Thank you so much.
Beth?
So you talk about going to other schools and getting students' voice from other schools. How do you do that at the high school?
Well, so Grace and it's been really easy this year because Grace is also in student government, and we talked about getting involved with them next year. So I think one of our reps, or both if they're able to, are going to go to at least one student government meeting a month and talk to kids around the school. And one of the things that we were hoping to do with getting kids involved in the application process this year is having like informational sessions, if you want to be involved, what could you bring, or like what could we tell you about what we do. So, thanks. Yeah.
And I think, I was just going to say, another piece of evidence was the work you guys did to build interest in the application process for this year. We don't need to make any amendments.
Awesome.
This is awesome. But I want to recognize that effort as having really been terrific, and I think broadened our pool probably with 2 occasions that you guys were available for people to come talk to you. It was great, and thank you, Martha, for being there too.
Diana?
I guess what's concerning to me, Laura, is your statement here about the opposition of our building administration to your visit. I guess my question was, did you make an appointment to come visit, or did you surprise them? Because if you, okay, I mean, as a parent, I've surprised a lot of administrators. My kid they left their sneakers at home. Something of that age. But I guess if you've made an appointment that this is a known thing that's happening, and they know the role that you play, and the purpose for the visit and whatnot, I'm concerned that our administration is not open and welcoming to our fellow students, okay, in their role, okay, as a board member, especially since one of the principal's roles I thought was to encourage leadership in students, because this is an active way of participating and learning that role. I find it discouraging, and I'm not sure of all the other words I want to add on to this. Some of them probably are not worthy of television. So quite frankly. But you can imagine, use your imagination. So, I'm yeah, unfun is definitely right up there. So, what is it that we can do, okay, to not have that occur again?
Yeah.
So that facilitation of that discussion occurs.
So, don't you think that's Beth's role?
I think it is Beth's role, but I guess I'd like to encourage the discussion between you and Beth as to working that one out, because I'm concerned.
I think it's clear evidence that we're at a beginning. I mean, we didn't say, and we're going to move further on student voice. That hasn't been one of our goals. It was going to be that we're going to introduce student voice. And it wasn't too long ago that we can all remember. I mean, the attentiveness that adults have to young people inside of schools and outside of schools is, not where it needs to be for our future. And that's evident from headlines right now today. So we're at a beginning, and this is great evidence for us to have feedback, to go back and reflect and look internally and say, this isn't the kind of perception that we want or the kind of experience that we want. So what do we do? Kim was the one that said, are people prepared to handle handing authority over students? Is the board? Is our community? We have evidence that some of our administrators are still trying to get eloquent with it, and we're clumsy right now. So I wouldn't expect us to be so far out of the park right now in success in something that we've struggled with for since 1826, when people have complained. And by the way, I wasn't in student government in 1826. Those two comments were
dreaming
just
about
way too close together.
So I think it is important to note that I don't believe Nick did go to any of the schools last year, other than high school. So this was the first experience, and frankly, I think it's important to say, and Liz, maybe you want to say something, that what the students walked into in Westford was a very unusual situation. So I don't know if it's fair to make blanket statements based on a very unusual circumstance.
I would just say that the way you captured it in this report was quite perfect. That the amount of time we spent with the administrators as opposed to the students was perfectly stated. And that, Martha, you're right. We walked into a situation that we did not know was happening, and it's not. This is not. If you would like to hear more details about what happened, we are happy to talk about it and tell you some of the specifics about how that went on. It was as Martha was saying, there were a lot of things going on at that visit, and a lot of learning and teachable moments, and Laura and Grace have done a great job of articulating what could go better in future and how we can take what we learned from that experience and get better at what we do. And they have done that. They took what they learned there and gone to a different school with a slightly different approach, which made it a little bit better. So this is all, as Brian was saying, this is all learning, and this is all an attempt to get better at what we're doing. So again, thank you for the guinea pigs that all of us are, but especially to Laura and Grace.
Yes. Kim.
In having gone with them to another administrator, I think there was a little sort of hesitance on allowing access until they could understand more about what it was going to be, and a lot of sharing in adult voice what was happening. And I think there was more convincing than seemed needed to be, to allow for some time in a morning meeting before school starts to really be able to share directly with some kids and share what they do, but hear from the kids in their own voices, their own pride in ownership of their leadership opportunities in their buildings. And it was a building where a lot of that is happening. it was a little bit surprising to me, the reluctance to allow that access. And so I do think, while I appreciate that that's a piece that Beth can share, I think we need to articulate in our voice as board members the importance and the role of what we're expecting of our students. Because I did, in that setting, remind the administrator that it is among their charges to be connecting with students in all of our buildings. And I think figuring out, as I had asked before, and I know there's so much that's trying to be shared and brought to our administrators in shifting culture and embracing the equity work. This is another piece of it, so maybe even asking administrators what would help them feel comfortable with empowering student voice, not just elevating it, because I think to the extent we elevate it but don't empower, we frustrate. And I would love for us as a board to articulate ourselves around that goal and help, as our students have asked, in defining and passing that along.
Yeah.
So administrators know what to expect and the authority with which they're coming to do that. So, we can do some of the work too, not just us.
Other questions or comments about the
I just when we were talking about like that being an unusual situation, having Grace and I go into different schools. I think it is unusual. It is a little bit uncomfortable, and I think it's really important that we have those kind of unusual, uncomfortable experiences. At the beginning of something like introducing student representatives to a district, in a way that's not been done in this district before. And I think when you have that opportunity, it's a really good starting point for building leaders to become comfortable with that idea, and students to understand that maybe what you eat at lunch is not a good thing to bring to those meetings, like maybe something else. And so I just think it's a really good learning experience on both sides, and because of that, it shouldn't be something that's unusual and cast aside. It should be something that's unusual and explored.
Good point. Brenton, did you? No. Okay. And are you ready to talk about the second piece?
Yes, awesome. So we have gotten in 6 applications for next year's student representatives. Yay! And so Grace was waiting until she had all of them to start reading them, and I've read a couple. I briefed over all of them, and I'm really excited. We have a meeting on Thursday to discuss some of the applications and pick which people that we want to interview, and then we'll talk about what kinds of questions are going to be in the interview.
And I just wanted to add one point, that those applications that came to us, the names that were redacted, so we don't know who these people are, we just know what their application says.
Right, and that was Grace's suggestion.
Right.
It was a good one. And the interviews are going to take place a week from Thursday. So we should have someone named by the end of May who will start with us in August.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Laura?
Thank you, Laura. Awesome job.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Good job. All right, next is the student transportation status update.
Yes. So the K-8 transportation is planned to start in the 2019-2020 school year, and that EWSD anticipates that the busing will happen as is in town, with as long as we have the same anticipated number of drivers that we have now. Some of the wins, we are looking to Jamie and Human Resource are working together to add some bus duties along with para-educator contracts, and that's been a very high interest right now. He's received a lot of people that are interested, and he and I were talking today too about, you know, we could do the same with food service or maintenance, so to do that. So he's anticipating that there'd be just as much to increase some hours with people. So, and we've been talking about that for a while, so that was good. He attended a TransFinder software training and is back from that. There's special education routings and driver. He learned some about the driver's shortage solutions, which is interesting. Can't wait to hear about that. He has hired a transportation dispatcher. This is somebody that it's not a new position really, but we shifted to this person working directly with him. It was working out of our special ed department, so we've shifted that over, and I think that'll be very helpful. It was always many phone calls or Jamie coming to the office, and now it'll be more efficient and sufficient. Let's see, what else to highlight? The contracts existing to extend the Georgia and Islands contract with a proposal for the 2019-2020, and advertise the Westford School K-8 transportation request for the proposals. Westford, Jamie did hear, is still very interested in the contract, so yes. And then, as you know, that Green Mountain Transit has committed to the number 4 Essex Center route, which just adjusted times, which is great. Continue the 60-day recruitment for bus drivers, bus aides, and crossing guard positions. There will be multiple messages delivered to EWSD families this week. The first one will go out in the Friday communication to families and communities, and then many other ways too. And then there's the timeline for those, and we still, for a threat, is still facing staffing challenges within our special ed transportation, and those are our own. And then doing the 10-day ridership survey for all the buses with both contractors.
Questions, comments, Andre?
You touched on the Westford K. Is that encompassing the high school?
Those are two separate contracts.
2 separate contracts, so one is not extinguished.
Correct. The K-8 had been on multiple one-year renewals.
Right.
And the high school, when the district first formed, bid the high school out and received only one bid, so that's on its own 3-year contract.
Thank you.
What sort of information should we expect in the village service information that's going out? Because I, as a village parent, not having ever seen busing, don't know if this will be information that'll help me decide, oh, my kid will be able to take a bus to her after-school activity that's near the other elementary school one day a week. Is that the sort of picture that I'll be able to see from this information? If buses run to certain places, or?
Yeah, I'll have to see. That's a good point about trying to inform people about alternative pickups and drop-offs for Essex Junction in particular. So the initial communication that's drafted, it's gone out to the leadership team, will go out to the thing, is really announcing the plan that is Path B. And then in that, Jamie talks a lot about sort of additional August events that will be how do I ride the bus in the junction kind of thing, and also trying to bring and introduce busing at various times, and all those more specific.
So this year I probably wouldn't have a picture until August of what times routes sort of.
So the timing of the query is good to see if we can, see where that can go, and whether it's, because we're hoping in June to do the opt-in, opt-out, and the alternative pick-up and drop-off. So you just raised my awareness that we have to do a lot more education for people that have never done that before, and whether their daycare is on a route and so forth. And so it's just really helpful for me to then go back and make sure that that language is in there to the best we can.
I don't know. Well, you've spoken about, so we'll go to Diane.
Okay. I mean, Keely brings up a good point. Are we going to have a touch truck or a touch a bus event? Come on, it was popular. Okay. Because there are individuals who haven't, done this sort of thing, and touch a truck, the school bus was a fascination up there. But just having a dry run a bus through to see how it functions through the village, and that might be a good opportunity to touch a bus, sort of a thing, because it's not just kids getting and the parents doing the thing. It's also those individuals who aren't accustomed to seeing them on village streets, also have to get accustomed to them being there. It's an adjustment for everyone. So is there going to be some kind of scheduled event so the community can adjust, accommodate?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be sensitive to the overall community, and our focus is going to be on preparing the students and the families. So, and we know that everyone that's currently at Hiawatha Summit, ADL, and Fleming have all gone through bus evacuations. They've ridden buses on field trips. They've had some experience on what are the behaviors and expectations on buses, because we have buses in the junction. The to and from school is very different, and so some dry runs of buses going around. And what most of the principals have really focused in on is at Hiawatha and Summit is kindergarten open houses, and having a bus there, loading everyone on, including parents, kind of doing a ride around. And it's similar work that we do to prepare new students to the district, but we recognize this is new to the village. And right now we have a number of buses that come through the village every day because they're on their way to the high school, and we also have special ed buses throughout the village that we self-perform. So it won't be a first-time event for somebody to see a yellow school bus during the beginning and end of school, but there'll be some volume to it, and there'll be some new streets.
Diane actually touched upon some of my question. You mentioned buses are not uncommon going through the village, but what is going to be uncommon to a lot of the traffic patterns is the stopping and starting. So I would advocate to reach out to the businesses, community that are going to be affected by the traffic pattern that's going to be dictated by the buses stopping and starting. But the other thing, I'd also like to hear more of this opt-in, opt-out, because I vaguely remember one of the schools that had that policy is that if you opt out, you would not get bus service for 6 weeks. So I guess I'd like to hear more.
We intend to run it just like we do right now and have for quite some time, and that is, I was wrong in saying it's an opt-out, and it's parents who choose that are of the vast minority, and but they choose it, and that it's just not going to happen. They're not going to put their kid on, and if it does change, we would accommodate it.
Well, I guess I want to have some assurances that if they opt out based on today's information, but tomorrow's information says we got to opt in, I want to have insurance that they will be accommodated even a day's notice.
Yeah. Well, to the degree of when they notify us, and to the extent that it requires additional accommodations, I mean, we have said to the board that, and the board has wanted, when we were looking at procedures, that we need to notify parents. So if all of a sudden somebody goes on and the entire bus schedule changes because of that, we also have to make sure that we're sensitive to the other 70
I understand.
students. So
thank you.
Just to respond to Andre's concern, the bus routes as they're set up for the village, it would only impact the number of people on the bus. The route wouldn't change based on somebody being added to the bus, because the routes are set up to be highly congregated.
Okay.
So it'd just be walk to your nearest stop and you can get on it, or
Or if
that
you're
bus is
there at the
full.
stop, you'll get picked up.
Todd?
And with this opt-in, opt-out, or whatever, so I would imagine some people in the village, it might be easier to transport their kids to school, but then want them to ride the bus home.
Yep.
That's gonna be
Yeah.
possible.
The big part for us and we sometimes even call people and double check to see what this next year's logistics are gonna be, but it's the people at the end of Brigham Hill Lane. It's the people that are up on Osgood Hill Road, at Sawmill Road. I mean, people that, it's a 20-minute addition to a route if all of a sudden their circumstances change and they need transportation. But, Keely's absolutely right. The model for the junction, not so much. Even the model within the town for the fact of just how we have to travel the geography. An opt-out is not a big win. It can help us some with understanding whether we're at a maximum comfortable enough of a bus or not. But we far more get people that just hedge their bets and say, I'll sign up. But we know we know we don't get all those people that are opting in.
So I have a couple of questions. This communication in May, is this going to be when we inform families that unless something changes, there is not going to be high school transportation?
That's not Path B. So Path B is that we're switching high school students in the town to K-12 routes. We're continuing to provide
That's right.
Westford, Georgia, and an independent island.
That's right. Okay. I'm
And the
sorry.
GMT public transportation is continuing to create a means of access. The report talks, we still have to work on early dismissal in Tuesdays, and we're working with the municipality on that issue,
Right.
as well as GMT.
So we have enough drivers to do that? We
So-
believe.
Yeah, so if we have the exact same number of drivers, what we laid out was a plan of taking away the 3 buses that are doing 6 routes for the high school right now to service the town, transferring those over into more of a loop model for the junction, and moving all the high school students into the existing and creating a transfer with the Georgia bus from Essex Elementary to the high school.
So it's the transfer piece that will be new to folks.
It will be new after this year. It was previously done when the high school changed its start time from 7:38, which I don't know how they ever got to 7:38, but from 7:38 to 8 a.m., they did that without working in conjunction with the town that was transporting. So that's all of a sudden created a conflict, and that's when transfers at gas stations and churches and property not owned by the school district were occurring to make it all work. We're gonna locate all the transfers onto school property at EES.
I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I was thinking of the other one. Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay. Todd, sorry.
So I was just trying to clarify, I had to go get a drink of water. For the, under the very beginning, when I talked about if we start the next school year with the same amount of bus drivers as we had at the beginning of last school year, I didn't quite understand how what was stated about the high school yellow bus and public transportation was different than what Plan B is going in with the amount of drivers we have now.
I think that is, I don't think that was meant to confuse you. But I think the way that it's worded is confusing. So I'll go back and make sure. Basically, what that's saying is, in Plan B, which is assuming we have the exact same number of drivers we have right now, we will be moving all the town high school students into the existing K-8 routes.
Which,
I understand. I read it as if we don't have as
Yeah.
many as we have now. Okay.
And we say in the communication, and it's just out of a sequence that we felt that the communication was just sort of finalized, that it should go to the ELT so that the leadership sees it, and then it would, once it's sort of been at least accepted or improved, then it would go to the full board. It would go out on Friday to the community, and then we intend to reach out to the Essex Reporter, who will probably want to do, a feature story above the fold on this, and big photos maybe, web build out, and be able to then have that follow the next week, and it won't be the end. But we do say in our communication that if the numbers change, if details change, we'll be in touch immediately, and we'll be updating you on our contingency plans.
So just to understand, I know like driver attachments to the bus driving company over the summer is fluid. At what point in the summer do you get an understanding of, yes, we have the same number of drivers, or no, we do not?
Well, and again, it's all up to those individuals. So they're under no obligation not to just say, yeah, actually I'm done. So I can't control the notice. What we'll do is that we'll confirm at the end of the school year who they have committed to return. And that will give us our first indication of whether there's vacancies to fill. And then, of course, over the course of the summer, we'll be in regular contact with them to understand if we have gainings or attrition. One of the big ones that we're waiting for is the 2 drivers that went through that didn't want to start on school bus routes but said they're committed. We're trying to figure out, to that degree. But committed is really only something that Mountain Transit and the school district's going to understand, not the individual, because there's not going to be some kind of way to enforce them to show up to work.
It's just at the engagement meeting last week, I heard from one person who is one person, but I think this reflects a lot of people's feelings that it's better to know sooner.
Yeah.
If you're in the high school and you're not going to have a bus, or who exactly it would be, if those routes are now mixed in with the K through 8, what would be happening, rather than being surprised in mid-August.
Absolutely. And there's no benefit to our district, and certainly to our administrators that work on this, to continue to be in a position where people feel like we knew something and didn't communicate it. But there's also just the reality that we are all based upon people making their own personal decisions for their own sort of life. So we'll pass that along as quickly as possible, and certainly we'll be keeping the board actively involved and informed over the month that there will be no meetings, so that you can continue to know where we stand and what's happening.
Okay, we good? All right, superintendent's report.
So I spoke with the vision. We had Erin McGuire facilitated a grant meeting. We are going for an equity grant. She facilitated that meeting tonight. She has different stakeholders there. Laura's mom is joining that. And then we have Dominique Smith, who has said yes to coming November 25th. To meet with, or to present to all teachers and para-educators. I just need to find a space. Cannot use the rink, it'll be too cold. And then he will work with the leadership team the following day. I don't know if you had an opportunity to click on that TED Talk. He's pretty captivating. We have a lot of people are really excited about it, and it just goes with right along with our building equity and our social and emotional learning. So we're pretty excited about that. We will be giving the equity audit as I look and I have the end of May. It'll be the end of May, beginning of June. We are not going to tweak wording or make it comprehensible for younger students. I think right now we've decided to go through 5 through 12 for the students, and then it will go to all teachers. But we will use it exactly as it is in the book, so we can even help and give the authors that data, which they're pretty interested in us using that. So that's pretty cool. We do have, and as I speak about this goal to establish a vision that permeates the district and guides our work, I think that it comes up even in conversations in talking when I met with the students about senior privileges. They talked about the vision. It's cool that you can, that it comes up in conversations. In our professional development room that is in the Essex Middle School that anybody can use, it's open and you sign up, there's a calendar. We have the vision that some students have painted on the walls. Pretty cool. And you walk in and it's everywhere, which is awesome that as a leadership team we meet in there on a weekly basis to see that vision, and we've been seeing it come to life. Remember, it is a vision. We are working towards it, just as with student voice. So the student outcomes, we will have a conversation, and Amy's prepared to come on June 4th. And we will talk about the different outcomes and the data that we already have and the data that we need to have, and then what as a board you would like to see. And maybe you can even help us think of some points that we knew when we wrote our measurable outcomes that we didn't have data for some of them, but we also can't stop from making that an outcome if you don't have the data. So that was pretty important that we went through with that. Student voice tonight, you had 2 presentations. I think that represented some of the work that we've been doing and in the district and with administrators working and having students have that voice. The financial responsibility, you had 3rd quarter presented tonight, and as Brian said, they will be adjusted, and then we'll have 4th quarter August. Is that correct?
Yeah, just have to look at what the audit schedule is and just trying to prioritize year-end reporting for the auditing purposes as well as report purposes. But certainly, if not at the 2nd meeting in August, then the 1st meeting in September.
Tomorrow I meet with the teacher supervision and evaluation task team. We don't have many teachers on it. I think it's the time of year. We started thinking we would do this, I thought we'd start this in November, and then we had the integrated field review that took about 30 people, so that was a time commitment for teachers. That then got put off to January, not by us, by the Agency of Education, and still had that time. So we don't have a lot of teachers involved in it. I have a lot of administrators, which is okay, because we will tomorrow discuss how to survey teachers with what we're using and go through that process. But we have, I'm facilitating that work tomorrow and looking forward to it. I sent you an article. You definitely do not have to read it, but you could if you would like to. And there's other readings, and we'll come up with tomorrow we won't come up with a process, but we'll start to review what they like about the systems they use now and what they don't like or what they need. And that'll be a good conversation. I look forward to having it as something to really produce. I did send out the why, the who, the how, the do as an attachment that explained to them and kind of advertised the work that we're doing and the need for it too. So all 10 principals have been supervised and evaluated throughout the year. They will now be reflecting on their goals. I meet with all of them tomorrow to talk about that end product. They really have been working on the same goals. It's a continuous improvement plan, and then they'll have a personal goal too within that. And we are working on a new system we're using. I sent those to you, the 4 dimensions of an instructional leadership. I do have the full rubric, but I just sent the sample to you. And we will work on a process for that. We have one not ironed out yet, but that'll happen, and they'll be self-assessing on a rubric, creating goals around that. Those standards are much more focused on that instructional leadership and helping to improve student learning than previous standards that principals use. So that's exciting work. And hopefully our teacher supervision and evaluation model will match that too, and will be about student achievement and improving that. That's about it. Yeah.
Questions, comments? Brendan?
Beth, we received your email about the delay in hiring the co-principal position at EES and FMS. I'm wondering if you could just kind of give us a little bit more of the rationale for why we're not trying to fill that position before the beginning of the coming school year.
So we had, I think there were 8 applicants. They narrowed that down. We interviewed 3. It just didn't seem like out of the 3 that there was a good match. And it was really, the whole entire committee felt that out of all 3. They were great candidates. Even I would say for a single principal, I think this is a different position. And to come in ready to team and do that work. So anyways, that's what we ended up with. I did talk with Wendy and Peter about an interim, and they just felt that they would get going and then feel like, oh, we're going to either have to open that up again and get all that work done with a third person that might not be the person that will be there. So they really feel like if they spend the time with me and their teachers even, ironing out what that looks like and even to get to more detail of what they need. There are definitely things that they will work on as if that person was there, and they'll start to develop their roles more, like Wendy taking over more of the special ed, being in each other's buildings, Peter being responsible for responsive classroom throughout the 2 schools. So those are things that they'll still pick up.
Do you think that the decision to delay will have a broader impact on the sort of strategy for greater SEL in those age groups? I mean, that was kind of all part of one,
right?
Part of a larger puzzle.
Right. Yeah. It definitely could, and I think the delay will get different candidates to open it up in November, December. It's hard this time of year to find an administrator.
Right. Yeah, as a board member, and thinking of all the time and the energy that you and your team put into making the case, some of the frustration that we felt at that showing up kind of last minute, it was very frustrating for me to learn that we were going to have to delay that another year. So. For what it's worth, there's my feedback.
Yeah, thank you. It was disappointing for sure. Wendy and Peter, but we went on there. I mean, it came down to them really deciding who they could or would want to work with.
I guess the thing that concerns me, and it concerned me from the beginning, is that I worry that we're looking for a personality and not a person, and so I worry that this role is too dependent on the personalities and the expertise of Wendy and Peter, and that might be a hard position to fill regardless of who you interview.
Well, and that's a good point, and we did step back from it and talk about that after even, and we will continue to have those conversations. I think, and as they're interviewing, they're thinking about the person that they were interviewing and whether even a match. You can't force a team. It's hard to force a team, and I think that was their number one priority, to look for a person that would come in, ready to get going on that end team, and that's hard. It's you. Yeah. I even say that about teacher teams. You really can't force them.
Do you think that, given that it's not co-principals, but it's 3 principals sharing 2 buildings, that it's the uniqueness of the position that's detrimental to finding?
No, I don't think this. No, I don't. I think it's the time of year.
Time of the year. But do you feel confident it's going to improve after the first of the year?
For
those
next,
that didn't get hired. Okay.
So when people start to think about a transition, they're looking December to look for a job. So most administrator jobs open up December, January.
I see. Thank you.
So we even want to jump that.
Sure.
Kim, and then
I think it was somewhat to that point, but I'm wondering, was there any opportunity to consider, because I remain concerned about the number of people they're supervising and evaluating, and was there any consideration to not an interim co-principal, but maybe an interim assistant principal or growing a person in a different role that maybe evolves into the person they're looking for. Something that gives them some support in the course of the coming year.
That's a good point, and I can go back to them to ask that, but we have discussed it, and it was really not something that they wanted to get staff used to, and having somebody new come in and start evaluations and then leave, or not really understand, like, why is this person only here doing this for this part of time? So, because we talked about, you know, do we do a 1-year assistant principal? But that's, they felt
And not
it would
even
be really
necessarily in
confusing.
2 buildings, but a shared person. I guess
Yeah.
obviously that'd be a hard person to do supervision and evaluation, but the other things that have to happen when the principal's doing supervision
Yeah.
and evaluation still require the authority
Yeah.
of an
I feel
administrator.
really confident that they made the right decision, and I'm really proud of them for really thinking that through.
And each building is getting a new dedicated FTE in the SEL coach. So there is a change of dynamic already, and even as I think was mentioned during the budgeting process, if we want to see the effectiveness of one investment, does making 2 investments at the same time could it confuse?
You guys were so good at convincing us, though,
I know.
of the
I know,
tremendous
it is-
need for it, that I think we remain concerned for that
Yeah.
reason.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to sometimes be patient on something that you put your teeth into.
Yeah.
I mean, but having it done wrong, I mean, it's the right thing to do. It's important to do it the right way.
Keely.
Just to kind of follow up on what Al said, I'm sure that you guys have looked at this from a lot of different perspectives, but the idea of when somebody goes to become a principal, they're thinking about becoming a building leader, but this is uniquely a principal without a building. So if it were possible to reconsider it so that we're hiring somebody for one of those 2 buildings as the like point person, and then once they're integrated into the team, how all of those jobs are divvied up might become more clear. It just might make it a position that people can imagine more, but that would be more, if it doesn't work in November to get the size of pool that you're thinking about, maybe consider those sorts of approaches.
Interesting. Okay, anything else on Beth's report?
I don't have anything on Beth's report, but when I went back to my notes, I recognized that we didn't finish one of the items I was hoping to introduce in the transportation update. We had said that we were going to solicit the board for ideas around data points that they wanted to see in the annual report. Perhaps we could just do that offline and have those sort of come through the natural channel. And I think Patrick had a great one, is I'd like to know what the total eligible was, so that we would include all those that were eligible for transportation and EJ, so we could look at that data, like who's the total eligible versus who was the total served. So that's a great data point that we can add in, but please send that email because I'll forget. But if there's other data points, I put in the notes, you know, we look at performance. We're sort of, Jamie is keyed in on efficiency and effectiveness and performance, but the board is going to want to be looking at performance versus policy. And so there may be data points that we haven't yet delineated that the board wants to see. And I'd like to this is just part of, like, if we know, we can hit it out of the park.
So if folks could think about that and send their ideas to me, then I can collate them and pass them on to Brian. Thank you. Pat, you had your hand up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're on Beth's report or
Yeah, no, for
transportation.
Beth's report, the meeting that Erin was facilitating, she asked me to be part of that group. Could you talk a little more about it? Because I actually think that it, like, is really exciting stuff. And I think that the board would be super excited to know
Yeah, I didn't
what's
bring
going
all
on
the
about it. I know you
notes
just
for
kind of
that.
like, right.
I can send those out, but it's an equity grant from the Agency of Education. So we had to write a letter of intent for it. And the kinds of things that we're talking about is the courageous conversations to have those happen. It's a national professional development that they work with district, or they work with anybody, not just schools. But they're already coming to Vermont, but we would like to have them come to Vermont to us also to train a big portion of people. So that's one of the things that we're talking about doing through the equity grant. They don't really specify like this is the amount of money. They look at what you ask for, so it's kind of hard to know like how to frame the work. But we've talked about the equity audit with funding in that to do that, and then set aside money for when we get the equity audit, what are those goals that because we will use the information that we receive from teachers and staff, and then look to see what do we need to do around equity. So that will be part of the grant. I have the letter of intent, which I could send to all of you. Want me to do that? Or have Erin do that?
I have it too. I can send it if you want.
Okay. That'd be great, yeah. That would be great.
Yeah, there was a lot in there about
everything.
diversity and implicit bias and the hiring of a more diverse staff and how we would go about doing it. It's just, things that I think have come up a few times at this level. So just knowing that, that's kind of like in progress, because most of us don't know what courageous conversations probably are.
Right. It's about the implicit biases that we have, and it does some of that hard work in conversations. So.
Other
policy in there, intent.
Lots of good stuff.
Other questions about best report, Kim?
I think the topic of grant prompted my thinking on this, and I was just wondering if there is any update on the grant that we were afforded to be able to allow for ACT testing for all of our, I don't know what grade we'd be doing now because it was much earlier this year.
Yeah, so for next year, that we have to notify families right off in the beginning of the year. I think the testing date is October. I have that information. I thought I reported that at one point. But I will find the date for that. So that will happen next fall. They opted for fall testing with ACT instead of spring testing.
And is it, I just think it would be really, really important for our families to know that.
Yes.
Before they spend the money, and it would be very important to know that the test results will be back in time for early applications, which is November 1. So I would be somewhat concerned around an October date. Being a senior parent now with post-traumatic stress and being done with all that, I'm just passing along some words of wisdom. But I'm thinking about our junior families, and perhaps it's juniors and seniors that are eligible, because juniors could very conceivably be taking it in the fall, and seniors, if those results aren't back before November.
I think it is a junior.
That could be late.
I think the thought is to focus on juniors so that there can be more college and career readiness planning that's
around
involved in it, rather than.
But if it's open to both, that's good information. I think just to whatever extent families know, they can plan and not pay separately for a different date.
Anything else?
This spring, that'd be good.
So I have just one thing. As you contemplate a teacher evaluation, supervision evaluation system, will you give any thought to having parent and student participation in that system in some way?
Yes. It doesn't, when you receive student information or student evaluation, or, and I shouldn't even use that word, but I'm going to use that because you did, student feedback or parent feedback, it doesn't become a part of the evaluation. It's feedback for a teacher to use to improve instruction. Yeah, that Was it that article, or was I reading a different one? I think the article that maybe it was a different one. It has like 4 or 5 questions about to ask a student, especially students, and didn't talk about parents. It talked about students, and then teachers using that feedback. So yes.
Because I know the last time we created a new system at CCSU, there was tremendous pushback from teachers about including any feedback from parents and students.
Well, it could be because,
and I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, well, it could be because the way that it was worded, and I don't know this, but if it was in the evaluation, yes, there would be a lot of pushback. If it's part of the formative for teachers, then it shouldn't be pushback.
Just on that, I've certainly had really wise students say, how many times do we get evaluated and we don't get to provide feedback? So those very wise young folks have offered perspective, I think, that should be listened to.
Some really good parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ready to move on? All right, next is to select a delegate. So who we have to send the name of one board member to VSBA or
yes,
to VSBA of the state, who is the official person who's going to vote on behalf of our board to ratify the healthcare contract, should it ever settle. And we haven't done that yet. So, thoughts? Pat?
Martha, I nominate you to be our
I second it.
We don't second.
Then we all vote
Still
yes.
with it.
No discussion.
I'm happy to do it. We did talk about this a little bit. And Kim doesn't feel comfortable doing it because of her roles in VSBA and State Board. But it will be a conversation with all of you before I vote anyway. So, if that's your will. So Brendan's made a motion. Is there further discussion?
Patrick
made the motion. I'm sorry. You tried to second motions. All those is in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Next up is a charge for the governance task team. We didn't ask Brian to do this, but after we had our retreat, he went home and drafted a charge and sent it to Beth and me, and we use that as the basis of what's in front of you tonight. The red that you see on here is because Brendan sent me some potential changes yesterday, and I felt that was too late to resend. I had thought you might have time to do that before you go, but I understand how that happens. So as long as they're in the document, maybe you can talk about them as we go through it. Does anyone have any general comments they want to make before we start getting down to specifics? I think you've all seen the proposed task team. Brendan has agreed to chair it, and
Was that in the board documents somewhere?
yeah, it's at the end, and these were actually Brian's recommendations as well. So
I really haven't seen this, and I don't know where to find it.
I haven't seen it either.
This is new.
I haven't seen this either.
it was in the documents, right?
The board documents right now?
Yeah. What's the document called?
But
It doesn't look like it's on the.
but I liked
shared
the
boards.
but I liked the looks of that committee.
You're
Because I'm not on it.
I don't think, I actually don't see it in the shared folder.
No, I didn't see. I haven't seen it.
I don't see it. I've got the share folder.
I am so sorry. I didn't need to read it because I helped create it. So I didn't look for it in the document. So I'm really sorry.
Can you put it back up there?
Yep,
Yeah.
I can.
So how do
All I
you,
see is really a blur.
how do you think we should proceed? I feel like we need to approve a charge tonight, but
There.
because we're not meeting again till the 4th of June. But I also feel bad that you haven't had a chance to think about it. Is there a way to put it up without Brendan's corrections in it? Or
Go to a previous
suggestions?
version.
Go to the previous version. Good luck.
What's wrong with Brendan's?
Yeah, why don't we want?
Well, I think, didn't you delete a whole paragraph, maybe?
I don't think I deleted it. I mean, all the.
Nothing's
It
wrong.
would show in
All of my suggested changes actually are showing up here, so, I did not remove anything that's being.
Okay, well, how should we do
Brian, are you
this?
printing those? No.
Yeah, I can do that.
Or
How many board members are on that?
4 board members
and Beth.
No, I don't need prints. I mean, it's up there now. I'm okay with it now. 15-page documents. Well, look, we're ahead of schedule. We have to wait for them to be printed.
Yeah, we're here till like 10:45. Might as well just.
Get comfortable
That's what the
here.
agenda said. I'm gonna have to take a nap.
Okay,
Can I raise a
let's
question?
try to go through it. Keely?
Just a wordsmithing question on the part that we can't see at the top. It said analyze and prepare analysis of. So maybe we mean something different by prepare analysis of, like present or
Right.
inform the board or something.
Present is probably a good word. Yeah.
I have the mouse, but unfortunately, I don't have the
keyboard.
Yeah, and I don't want to start. Yeah, I don't want to pry into Brian's computer and
I
start.
think it's that keyboard, though. Well, that's all right.
one? It's that keyboard.
Want me to go make some changes while we're doing it?
Actually, I have access to the document. You want me to?
Okay.
Are we gonna edit as a committee here?
Does anyone have a good suggestion?
For what to do right now?
What to do right now?
We can just.
I prefer
Pick
to
two.
receive things more than 30 seconds in advance, but this seems
But
like
it's
it's
short,
describing
straightforward,
a charge that's
I think we can do
similar
it.
but on a different topic to what we did with transportation. So I have the most questions about being intentional about the timeline.
That's what I was just gonna say, we roll.
What was the first suggestion?
Present instead of prepare.
Review, analyze, and
present.
possible
analysis.
school board governance models.
Right. Instead of prepare analysis, it's present.
Where is this? I'm not even
The
seeing it.
very
First
first
line.
up there, review
And
present. And take analysis.
I would just say
of.
present, get rid of analysis of as well.
Present possible school board governance models. Yep, there you go. Yep.
Okay, so then the
Then provide-
tasks, can we did we share this with everyone on the board, so at least those who have computers can look at it?
So Al, Keely, I'll share it right now with
Vision. Not all of us.
I definitely don't. I'm okay back here. I can't see from over there.
Okay, so let's go through the tasks. So the first task is to update the board and present on various models. The second is to identify key issues and challenges of any model that's being discussed. The third is to provide the board with what the committee or the task team thinks are the implementation needs, what the timeline would be, what financial implications there would be, and what policies and procedures might be needed. The fourth is to provide opportunities for the board to give input and feedback on the models. And the last is to provide specific recommendation to the board based on that feedback and the task team's analysis. Let's go through the whole thing and then come back and see what we want to do. The time frame talks about a first meeting in May, in June, providing the whole board with the committee's schedule and how they're going to approach their task. It suggests that the August board retreat have an opportunity for the board to ask questions of a panel of people who have experience using the governance models that are under consideration, and to provide a progress report. And then in the September-October timeframe, to complete the analysis and provide recommendations to the board. Beth and I don't know if this will work out, but Beth and I talked about the fact that there's a 5th Tuesday in October, and
No,
there is
No,
it?
when I went back and looked to the
Oh.
detail. No, it's that
Okay,
Wednesday.
never
It's
mind.
Months of Valentine's Day.
Okay. We were thinking maybe we could have a board meeting.
There's a lot of Wednesdays.
We were thinking maybe we could have a board meeting devoted completely to this discussion, but it sounds like at least that particular idea isn't going to work. So the task team that I intend to appoint tonight would be chaired by Brendan, and I would have Kim, Keely, and Diane, and Beth as members. So shall we go back to the beginning and see what comments folks have? Here's an idea. What if we don't consider this perfect at the moment, but we say it's the general concept of what we want, and we give board members a chance to spend some time with it, and the task team to have their first meeting and spend a little time with it, and then at the June 4th meeting, formally adopt the charge. It's a little backwards, but does that feel more comfortable than trying to do it when folks haven't seen it?
I think I'd be fine with people you've nominated, just kind of polishing it up, maybe
Me
come
too.
back and adopting it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, and as folks look at it, perhaps if they have specific suggestions, then they could send them to Brendan for consideration.
Well, people now have access to this document, so they could actually add comments right in it. Or if they're more comfortable with just sending me an email, that's fine too.
Okay. All right, are we comfortable moving on? I speak for Beth, I know when we say we're really sorry this wasn't in the documents. Okay. So next item is to appoint task teams. And so I will just go through what I have based on what you sent me in terms of what your interests were. I would like to say before I start that with the facilities planning, that work isn't going to start right away, but I have asked a couple people to, I have assigned a couple people to that work when it does start. So you just saw the governance task team. The communications task team is Liz, Keely, and Patrick. Negotiations will be Kim, Andre, and myself. Todd, I've assigned you to the Regional Advisory Board for Technical Education. Patrick has been doing that, and so Patrick, if you and Todd could have a conversation, that would be helpful. The CTE Corporation, Diane, and Facilities Planning, Al and Todd, when that work begins, which is, okay. All right, so, yeah, yes, Brendan.
So I just have a question about the negotiations piece. So currently,
It's for next year.
So any work that we're doing around the mediation should continue with Andre, me, and Kim.
Right.
Okay.
This new team would be for the next contract. Okay, so next up on the agenda is to set a date for the August board retreat. Probably should start with you, Beth.
Well, in the past, we have done it on a Tuesday, on a regular, for the past couple of times that I've been involved in, on a regular Tuesday.
And done board meeting as part, no, we did.
No, we did it, I think last year we did it on a regular Tuesday, and another time we did it right after in-service, which
Yeah.
that one didn't work. That was the very first year.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
So I guess my memory is as good as it used to be. So we did it at the first on the first Tuesday in August. And if we had board business we had to do, we did it as part of that meeting. Okay. So I think we started at like 1.
We did start it at 1.
And we went through dinner.
So last year we did it on Thursday the 2nd.
Oh, we did?
I thought it was a different meeting.
Yeah.
And we went to 8.
What were we thinking?
And we all enjoyed it.
And the students
And I
joined
remember
us
people saying,
at dinner.
Brian, that was amazing.
Give Brian Donahue a raise.
So I guess the first question
Well, then
is,
done, we did that.
do we want to do it on a separate day, or do we want to do it on a board meeting day? The only trouble with doing it on a board meeting day is we won't have met for all of July. So how much stuff is going to be packed up?
I'll be first out. I think I'd like to see separate dates, if permissible.
Of course, this first week in August is so hard for me.
We're talking about the week of August 5th through 9th.
August 5th through 9th, yep.
Yeah, that's very hard for me as well.
And Brendan and
I have
Martha.
to take a break of about 2 hours to drive to 3 separate sites to pick up my kids.
Been there.
I'm out of country.
Pardon?
I'm out of country from the 10th through the 15th.
The 10th to the 7th.
The
I
15th.
might have learned to drive by now.
What about Thursday, the 1st of July, of August?
Not here. Leadership, BP. So,
I'm not shocked.
August 13th, Tuesday after our board meeting?
what about the 13th?
I'm here.
You're gone from
I'm
the
gone.
10th
To the 15th. You want to do it on Friday the 16th?
Friday the 16th? Better than Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Works for me.
Friday does work for me.
So I think I'm going to have Brian and Beth look at what dates are possible for them and send something, have Lauren send something out, and we'll see if we can find a date, okay? Because that works for the majority. This is clearly not working.
Time of day, are we talking like 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock again? We're still,
Yeah.
okay.
I
Well,
think
that
so.
was 2 to 8.
Or whatever, yeah, like
2 to 8,
2
1
to 8,
to
whatever.
7.
The meal it will include will be dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
You'll have
My
the,
priorities. Make sure you eat lunch. Come
No, they're going to send
not
possible dates.
just for when the information will be ready and that kind of thing. Yeah, not when the data is ready.
Okay, so next up is testing updates, communication. I think we don't have the data yet from the community engagement, but
We are close,
maybe
though.
you want to
Believe it or not.
make some general comments.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thank you everybody for being there and for being super engaged, not just being there, but really doing a great job of seeming like you wanted to be there. So thanks for that. We had 31 people in attendance, 12 of us were board members, and 3 of us were administrators, which means we had 16 community members come out, which on a Tuesday night in May is what it is. We had as you saw, we had I sent out that post meeting evaluate with a little link to just an evaluation. We got 6 responses from that. So I don't know if it's the 16 community members and it's 6 out of 16, but we did get a couple of comments about the time of year was challenging. A couple of other comments about 2 distinct comments about what a great presentation Keely gave, and I'd like to also say that it was really a wonderful job. So thank you for that. We got, of those 6 responses, 100% of the people said that the structure did what it said it was going to do, and 100% of the people said that the equity framework does make sense. So even if it's small, we're making some inroads with this. I did want to do a little bit of a debrief with all of you about how that went for you all. So there's 2 things. One is that survey is still live, and even though you are board members, it would be great if you wanted to write any comments or any kind of suggestions or ideas you have. It's in that survey that you already have a link to, so please feel free to comment there with any kind of suggestions for future engagements or specific comments from what happened last week. And the other thing I'd like to do is to try, if you don't mind, Brendan, taking his idea and just right now going around with a little bit of an appreciate, value, or challenge. And I'll just take notes while you're doing that, and then we'll get back to those challenges and work from that. But if everyone's okay with that, rather than a full debrief for right now, I would love for you to take your time on the comments on that form and just do a go around right now with those 3 words. Does that make sense?
Not about tonight.
About the engagement, not about tonight.
Right.
Specifically about how the engagement went for you last week. And as Brendan described, it's a word or a phrase.
So it's a value, a challenge, or an appreciation. Not all 3.
Just one.
That's 3 words.
And maybe, as we're doing it, we can help if people start going off. Tonight's our trial run, so we will cut you off if you're going. And so, Brendan, you want to start?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I did appreciate the great presentation that Keely gave. I was challenged by, and this happens at...
One thing, I thought.
I'm saying.
I
was challenged by, and this happens a lot at community engagements every time we do them. I was challenged by the fact that some of the participants, either they don't understand the expectations of their expectations, and they use that forum as an opportunity to air specific grievances that they have about a particular issue, which was incredibly challenging for us to navigate as facilitators.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Challenging, turnout.
Do I play the game?
Sure.
I really appreciated the leadership role of the board in community engagement. It was remarkable.
I was going to say something similar, but I'll switch it a little. So I appreciate the role and the presentation on equity and the role that you all played in facilitating, like, what that means to us and gathering feedback. I am excited to read all that feedback.
I appreciated the fact that we had students involved as board members and students who came to be engaged in the conversation.
I found it appreciating and challenging both simultaneously. I think I call what Brendan was saying, the airing of the grievances, but on the other hand, there's some takeaways of what they would like to see, and that was valuable. Oh, 3 words, sorry.
Yeah, I think I appreciated the presentation. Keely was excellent. There was really good feedback afterwards, good conversation. But I think the challenging part of it is to get some really important feedback and not have a concrete plan as to how we're going to go forward.
I'm incredibly appreciative of the work that went into planning. I think the agenda was well planned, the timeline was well planned, and the facilitation allowed us to step into that role with somewhat limited experience and be, I thought, effective facilitators. So thank you very much.
I really appreciated all of how willing and talkative a lot of the people that were there were, and they were really involved in the conversation. One of my concerns is like I feel like some of the problems that our group brought up were like more focused around administration, like things that the board doesn't have a lot of control over. But definitely like my biggest concern, I got a little bit upset with Keely in the beginning because she used a pyramid and I was like, why would you pick a 6 pyramid if you weren't going to use the base? But then I appreciated that she used it. That was like
the slides from the annual board presentation.
I'm going to echo Brendan. I would say was somewhat overwhelmingly challenged by because of the area where we were facilitating. It was quite frankly distressing. And I needed to decompress after that.
Todd?
I left the meeting feeling challenged on how we can get a broader spectrum of participants going forward and possibly on an providing an ongoing opportunity to provide input, not just in discrete bites.
I appreciate all the positive feedback on the presentation, but still had like my concern that I'm giving a PowerPoint lecture when we're talking about like innovative engagement methods. Like, this is ironic.
Okay, well, I'm going to end with a value just to model this. It's clear to me that one of the values I took away was that the opportunities for people to connect with each other is really important to our community, and what if we as a board can create those opportunities for people to connect and more regularly, and continue to build on what we do well and what things we could do better, I think that would be great. So, thanks for all of that. I'm going to give a couple of So if I could just a couple minutes for next steps. So voices. Ben and I are meeting tomorrow to talk about both the things, the engagement and the community work that happened that I mentioned around the work that was happening around racism in the community, and the community group that has formed as a result of that Voices is also running. So these two groups had two meetings, ours and theirs. Both were successful, and both of them were attended by people who want to be involved in this work, which is great. So we're going to sit together and figure out the way forward, and plan the agenda for the next Voices meeting, at which point we will really figure out the work over the summer, which I mentioned to you is going to be that sort of thin, if we remember that spectrum of thin and thick engagement, we're going to be doing the thin work over the summer, where we're going to be intentionally going to where people gather and trying to get to talk to people where they are. And that's a strategy that we're going to come up with and can present to you after Voices meets at our next meeting. So that's happening. And then the data, I've almost finished entering all of the data from all of the groups while I was waiting for Game of Thrones to start. What I have done with that work is put it into your areas that you were assigned to. Each of them are now grouped into that same, obviously, from your flip chart. What I'm going to ask of you is that you look through those, the form that I gave you for your original sentence statements. You can just put in any comments and anything else right in that Google form that you already have. In fact, I'm going to share your group with that same form. It's all going to be in one place. And you'll see there where your statements are on the top. You'll see what your group came up with. And what I'm hoping is that you will look that over and come up with some themes and identify some next steps that you have for your group that you can share with me and I can bring to the Voices meeting next month. Does that make sense? When I send it to you, I'll send it with those directions, but you'll receive the same sheet you already had, but it'll be now populated with all of the data that we received that night. Does that make sense? So that's it on that. I have one other thing. Since we're not meeting till June 4th, I just wanted to remind the board of Ned Kirsch's service on June 1st.
I have it in my car. I'll go grab it.
Yeah, Pat has a card,
card
and
for
that he's
everyone,
been
so.
carrying around, and he'll go get it so we can, but it's on June 1st in St. Albans. It's from 3 to 4:30. I know several of us are planning on being there, but just wanted to remind the board that that's taking place at Collins Purley in St. Albans.
Any other comments or questions from Liz? Liz, do you think the communications task team, this is sort of a question for Brian too, needs to help arrange any public communication around transportation? Or do you think that can all be done through your contacts with parents?
I mean, I work through Ben, the magic of Ben, and I think Ben.
So do I.
Yeah. So I think we're intersecting at the same place, our communications department. So if there's strategy or there's feeling like maybe we need more or maybe we should get that out, those will then come back to me and so forth. So I'm open to anything, but I think we've got a good connection through the Ben overlap. You know, we're looking, I'm feeling actually a little anxious about trying to map out fall engagements, because I know the board's talking about one. I know that there'd probably be some kind of VFE one. I know that there's been some talk about a school safety one. There's some questions that we have around school start and stop time. You know, this is everyone's getting excited about engagement, and I think it's, you know, sort of like voting dates. Is like it needs to be some kind of cohesive plan so we don't overload people and therefore not get that kind of diverse.
Definitely. And right now, we have a September meeting and a fall engagement, and that might not be the way to go. And I think you're absolutely right, that part of the work that we're doing is to take these silos and break down the silos so that we're all able to to work together and to not have all these different things every weekend, and why didn't I know? So I think that's part of our work too, to make sure that those are intentional and are driven by what the community wants to talk about. And I think we're starting to ask those questions about what is most important to people.
The public meeting for transportation in August, you know, may be valuable. I think we just need to maybe put together a map of what all these opportunities.
And that's part of what Ben and I were going to do tomorrow too, to look at some of that. So,
Keely?
Just to add on something inspired by that is, if we're having a lot of different meetings on different topics that would be interesting to the same people, maybe inviting other people to co-locate with our September, October engagement, so that, like, you can go to the panel on this or the panel on that, but we have a part of the meeting where we all come together and share something.
Yeah, and we have, you know, we've talked in the past about the 9 front porch neighborhoods, and maybe we start looking front porch forum neighborhoods, maybe we start looking at having an ambassador and getting out in the community in different ways. There are a lot of things that we've brainstormed about how to do this better, and we just have to start trying some of those things to see what works, and I think that's the work of the summer, and certainly for planning to be intentional about what happens in the fall.
Okay, anything else for Liz? All right, local and statewide updates. So, at our meeting in June, we're going to talk about the timing of the school budget vote. I've prepared a little outline of things that we would have to consider. We are also going to need to be mindful of what's happening with the town and village governance discussion. So we didn't have time on this agenda, so we will do that on June 4th. Statewide, Kim, do you have things you want to say?
So I don't know that I have too much more than what was in the legislative update. I think, things like things are stalled for some education-related matters are pretty stalled right now for somewhat concerning reasons, like that they're just not even talking anymore around some matters that make it likely that the miscellaneous ed bill isn't going to happen, which had a bunch of smaller pieces in there that were somewhat important. And then it'll end up being, I think, tack-ons to the budget bill. And I'm sure Martha knows this process better than I, which then I think becomes challenging at the end of a session. And I think it unfortunately lends itself to things landing in there that in unintended ways at the end of a session. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that we know what's going to happen with the delay in special ed. I think that is a big issue.
That's all tied up with the Act 46 delay.
And they're no longer even discussing that anymore right now.
And Dylan sent me something this week that showed that all but one of the districts that were told that they had to unify have done the steps they need to do. So it makes you wonder if delays are really needed. But
and in the absence of resolution, it's the law. So unless a delay is approved, the law is that people are to be functional.
But they do need some language around if they can't get an adopted budget by July 1st, what happens? And in this new special ed funding system, lots of people think that needs to be delayed a year because the agency has drafted some rules, but people think the rules are so restrictive that there won't be the flexibility that's required for this new funding system. But the Senate tacked their Act 46 delay language onto the special ed funding bill. It's a mess. And the education pieces seem like they're a mess. And so Kim's probably right. If they can't, I've done this. If they can't, get something figured out, that maybe some pieces will be put in the budget at the last minute.
I think the State Board of Ed will be asking for a push out of the deadlines for the rules process. That I do expect to happen tomorrow. And so there are draft rules. I think there is a lot of objection to a lot of the pieces of it. We've received them from the agency. Obviously the intent with the block grant is that you'd be able to operate a little more creatively and yet still within the law to get the federal funding. And I think that the sort of coalition of VSBA, VSA, the special educators are seeking to get additional counsel. There's no special ed. They're very limited special ed expertise in law in Vermont, so they are looking to see where within the federal law there could be more flexibility than is currently being interpreted at the AOE. And so I think that coalition is seeking some support to maybe find other ways, because truly if we're not going to change practice and we're just going to get a block grant, and the sentiment is that we're losing money if we don't execute on this. It wasn't necessarily the intent that it that it be saving money so much as utilizing the resources differently to better deliver special ed. So if we're not operating differently in our districts and we're just getting less money to accomplish the same thing without operating differently, I don't think that serves kids or districts. It's a shift. It's a cost shift. We know how that happens. So that's problematic. That was a lot of what I was hearing, and I think you might have read or seen on the stall that's happening on the healthcare negotiations. You probably have seen that is stalled for the fact that the law is very explicit that there be 5 parties from each side, and the NEA is bringing 5 alternates, so they're bringing 10, and the district sides, that team has been, they filed a unfair labor practice suit, but have been meeting, and they asked that at this coming meeting, or the one that was supposed to have happened last Friday, either this Friday or last Friday, that, they've been going with 10 versus 5. They're saying now, like in good faith, just come with the 5 the law says you're supposed to come with. They're refusing to, so I don't know whether that meeting is going to happen. It is really unfortunate. There's a tight timeline, and I think Elizabeth, the chair of that committee, has just said that this is just unfortunate, and I don't know that there's an opinion yet, so.
Well, the best resolution to that would be for the labor board to make a decision on the unfair labor practice sooner rather than later. Any questions on local and state updates? Okay, so Keely, takeaways, right? You're going to do the takeaways. So, I would think we might want to talk about the 2 student presentations.
Yes.
What else? Pardon?
Committee organization?
Yeah. Yeah.
Governance committee.
Separately or as part of
A lot of this was really inter-board stuff as opposed to
Transportation update? Want it there, or do you want it somewhere else?
I mean, that will get posted.
Yeah, it'll get
probably
posted.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
It'll be in the board.
linked
Okay.
minutes,
Okay.
so probably not.
Okay.
I think that's probably it for this time. Okay, and items for the agenda for June 4th. We are going to talk about the timing of the budget vote. We will have a discussion of student performance indicators and what we're looking for in that regard. Do any board members have specific requests? It will be Grace's last meeting. Yeah. So that will be sad. And Kim's last meeting.
Oh.
So,
Aren't you already? As much fun as our meetings are. To deal with us at night and then those adorable little munchkins in the morning.
all right, and our second meeting in June, I want to be sure everyone noticed, is on the 25th. So it's the 4th Tuesday instead of the 3rd, because Beth is not available on the 3rd Tuesday. And there's something she wants to do with us at that meeting.
I'm out of town.
I probably can't attend. I think that's the joint select board trustees.
Yes. Yeah.
So, great, that's okay.
Still a quorum.
Still a quorum.
Our next meeting is the 4th, though, right?
Correct.
Right.
So we're definitely meeting on the 4th. You think we should move it back to the 18th?
I won't be here the 18th.
I won't be here the 18th or the 25th, so.
The 11th? I'm not sure I'm here, but we're running out of Tuesdays.
My 25th wedding anniversary, we can't be at a board meeting.
Sorry, my brain's fried. What should we do?
What's that? 25th.
20. Is the 11th a choice? I know that's a terrible week because it's the week before graduation, but.
It's,
So you just stick with the 25th, to be honest.
Wait, did we
Okay.
have how many people missing?
The only problem is, well, that's the meeting at which we evaluate the superintendent. I don't think we're going to be ready to do that on the 11th, frankly.
And we probably can't move student data reporting to the 4th versus the second meeting.
Well, to get your input.
To have the discussion about what we're looking for first.
I'm just wondering if you guys know the scope of the data we can readily report on, and you know what those goals are under the continuous improvement plan, and you're the educational professionals, you guys might be able to give us the data you would use to prove your progress in those areas. And we could table it if we'd like to see something more, and then just Amy could come if that, but it sounds like people aren't available the 18th either. But it would be, we could at least be able to think about evaluating the superintendent in the context of evaluating our progress towards our vision with respect to student progress or something like that.
When are you thinking we would evaluate the superintendent? Yeah.
Like executive session at 11 o'clock on Tuesday the 4th. Does that not work for people?
That will not work for me.
No, I guess I'm not. I do think it would be important for Beth to be able to be here when we're getting, reporting on the continuous improvement plan. So I don't know if it makes sense to do it when just Amy can come.
How many people won't be here on the 18th?
I could probably Skype in, but I can't be here in person because I'll be in Maryland.
Okay. You can't be here the 18th or the 25th.
No, it's
It's a Tuesday.
Oh, it's a Tuesday.
Was the 11th out? Are people around the 11th? I know I'm like shooting myself in the foot with the graduation that week.
Last week of school.
I just think, I don't
Yeah.
think that's a good.
No. Hey, it's an especially bad time for me. I'm just putting it out there.
I got a house full of people coming up from Boston.
Oh, there you go.
Like budget.
All right, help me out here. I don't know how to resolve this impasse.
Does it have to be a Tuesday?
Well, that's another thought, but the people who are available on the 25th, they're not available that whole week. Is that correct or
That's
not?
not correct for me. I'm available on the 19th, just not the 18th, and then I'm unavailable from the 24th to the 5th, 7th of July. So I could go. The 19th or the 20th is the Wednesday or Thursday of June.
What? I mean, I know that we don't
Those would work?
usually do it, and I don't know if it's going to interfere too much with anyone's plans, but it's only July 2nd, so most of that month would be off
that'd
if we
be
did
terrible.
the first Tuesday in July.
Most people are
I'm
probably
not here.
traveling for.
I'm not here.
Yeah, for 4th of July. I will just say the 19th and the 20th. I have a state board.
I mean,
retreat.
are people? Like,
Oh, I'm out of
I mean, I'm going to be in town.
I'm out of town.
Right, Liz, you're out of town for like 4 weeks.
I know, I am, actually 3, but yes, I am.
Well,
I think I'll be back on the 20th.
What would you think of doing the superintendent's evaluation on the first Tuesday in August?
Yeah, I could do that.
We could do that.
Yeah.
That works.
So then we could keep the 25th as our
And then we could
second
do the-
meeting in June. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
All right. Phew. All right. Do we want to do our little exercise a second time around to evaluate this meeting? So what's something you valued, something you appreciated, or something you were challenged by? Pick one of those 3. Todd, you ready?
I'm gonna pass.
Okay, Keely?
I valued the clarity of the student goal monitoring report.
Damn it, we all just said that at the same time. I appreciate the students. I appreciate you, Laura, so much. So thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you. I appreciate all of you. Y'all are great.
I valued having a very clear policy to follow for tonight's approval of the flying of the gay pride flag at Westford. It was very helpful in my individual decision making, and I think our decision making as a board.
I value and appreciate Kim, since it is her last meeting. I think a round of applause for.
You got this first one.
No, she has
she has
another
one
one.
more?
One more.
Oh, I
And
thought
so-
this was the last.
No, and,
Oh.
and Grace has
still
another
going.
one too, but we'll clap for you anyway.
I'm sticking with that too.
That's my story, and I'm staying with it.
I really appreciated hearing from the students from both Westford and the high school, and seeing where those, while there's still is a need to have that exponentially expanded, that opportunity, it's great to see the leadership that we have in our students.
I appreciated the student voice from Laura and the students that presented tonight and the amount of work that went into the senior privileges and taking feedback from a lawyer and safety and security and all of that and then adjusting.
So now that you've taken mine, I appreciated the board discussion of the retreat. I thought that was a healthy discussion.
I appreciated the students coming forward and the ongoing commitment to the board with their presentations and student voices. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, I think along Martha's lines, I think appreciated the board retreat issues and important work that has to be done. That was getting that out on the table is an important first step. Yeah.
I loved hearing from the students. I value that. And I have to say I was a little challenged by sort of our timeline for moving the work from the retreat to action and implementation, but I look forward to getting started on.
I really valued the presentation from the students. I'm really excited that Belle came because she was one of the kids that Grace and I met with at Westford, and maybe she'll be the next student rep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in a couple of years, you know.
Yeah.
There's always those possibilities. I appreciate the student participation, both at board table and in the presentation tonight.
All right, thank you, everyone, and we are adjourned.
Just come up with the best.